Far away in a quiet corner of the galaxy, the Eliari people faced a terrible fate they could not stop. Their sun, once bright and steady, had begun to die much faster than nature should allow. The Eliari were gentle and wise, known for their kindness and deep connection with the stars, but they had no way to save their world from the dark shadow creeping over their future. With every passing day, their crops failed, their rivers slowed, and the warmth that gave life to their home grew faint. They sent out many messages into the vastness of space, hoping for help, but none came. Nearby, the warlike Brakkan Empire was growing stronger and closer, their ships ready to take what they wanted by force. The Eliari's hope was fading fast. Then, from a hidden station at the edge of the galaxy, something unexpected happened. A long-forgotten signal sparked to life, answering the silent call. The station belonged to humans, a species thought to have disappeared from the stars, their stories reduced to myths and warnings passed down by other races. But humans had not vanished. Instead, they had gone silent, watching from the shadows, growing stronger in secret. Captain Mara Voss stood on the bridge of the great human ship, the Obsidian Dawn, as the distress signal reached her ears. The message was simple but desperate, a plea for help from a race that few had heard of and fewer still cared about. But Mara knew something others did not. The galaxy needed humans again, not as conquerors, but as protectors. With a steady voice, she ordered her crew to prepare. The ship's engines roared to life, and they jumped through a wormhole, emerging near the dying star of the Eliari. Around them, the silence of space was broken only by distant echoes of conflict. The Brakkan fleet was already there, dark and threatening, circling like vultures over a dying world. But the humans did not hesitate. Instead, they sent out a calm, clear message that stopped the Brakkan in their tracks. "We have come to help." The air was thick with tension as the two forces stared at each other, unsure what would come next. The Brakkan expected weakness and easy victory. What they got was something no one had seen in centuries. Humans who stood firm, armed not just with powerful weapons, but with hope and unshakable courage. The Eliari watched from their shrinking cities, their hearts beating with a mix of fear and wonder. Could these quiet legends truly save them? The first shots fired were not from guns, but from words, a warning and a promise that the humans would not allow harm to come to those who asked for help. The Brakkan hesitated, their ships faltering. The humans moved with precision, their technology advanced beyond anything the galaxy had seen in ages. Shields rose like shimmering walls, protecting the Eliari from harm. Machines that seemed alive hummed quietly, ready to repair and restore instead of destroy. And in the center of it all stood Captain Mara, her eyes fixed on the horizon, knowing this was only the beginning of a battle, not just for a star or a world, but for the very soul of the galaxy itself. The moment the human ship, the Obsidian Dawn, came through the wormhole near the Eliari system, the quiet tension in space exploded into something electric. Captain Mara Voss stood firm on the bridge, her eyes scanning every readout, every signal, every shadow on the radar. The ship was huge, and unlike anything the nearby species had ever seen, its black hull absorbed light, its smooth curves hiding engines that hummed with hidden power. No flags, no loud symbols, only the simple Earth sign for peace burned softly on its side. Around them, the stars blinked cold and distant, but Mara felt something new hope. The Eliari sun, flickering weakly against the cold void, was the center of a small, fragile world desperate for help. And the Brakkan Empire, the galaxy's most feared warlords, were circling like sharks, waiting to strike at the first sign of weakness. The silence that had hung over this corner of space was about to break. Mara's voice was calm but strong as she gave her first orders, all systems ready. Open communications with Eliari Command. Prepare aid modules for deployment. And send one message to the Brakkan fleet: we come in peace. The crew moved like a single living thing, responding to the captain's will with practiced speed. Outside, the enormous Brakkan warships shifted their positions, weapons charging, waiting to see what these humans would do. When the human message came through, it was simple and clear. This species called for help. We answered. Stand down. Silence followed, thick and heavy. Then, the first Brakkan warship fired a warning shot not to destroy, but to intimidate. Mara's fingers hovered over the control panel. Instead of firing back, she ordered the ship to activate a defensive field unlike anything the Brakkan had ever faced. The shot vanished against the human shield, absorbed harmlessly, leaving the attackers stunned. The Brakkan did not expect this. They had heard stories of humanity's power long ago, stories filled with fear and caution, but none had seen it firsthand. The obsidian dawn moved with grace and power, weaving through space as if it were alive. Mara knew this was their chance to prove humanity was not just a legend of war, but a force for protection and peace. She ordered drones to deploy small machines that floated toward the Eliari world, spreading devices to stabilize the sun's dying energy. At the same time, replicators started creating food, clean water, and medicine for the starving planet below. The Eliari people watched from their homes, eyes wide with disbelief and hope. The humans were not conquerors, they were saviors. But the Brakkan would not give up so easily. Furious, they launched a second wave of attacks, targeting the drones and human ships. But every attack was met with a new defense. Human technology adapted instantly, turning energy attacks into harmless pulses and redirecting missiles away from vulnerable points. The battle was tense, but no human life was lost, and no Eliari harm came from the fighting. Then, Mara made a bold decision. She sent small boarding pods down to the surface, not to fight, but to help rebuild. Human engineers and doctors landed in Eliari cities, working side by side with locals to repair buildings, heal wounds, and restore the land. This was not war. This was a mission of hope. The Brakkan commanders watched helplessly as their plan to conquer a weakened species failed. Instead, the humans showed strength in mercy and power in kindness. Whispers spread quickly through the galaxy, humanity had returned, and they were nothing like anyone had expected. The galaxy held its breath, wondering what would happen next. Would the Brakkan retreat, or would they try one last desperate attack? And what secrets did the humans hide behind their silent ears? Captain Mara knew the fight was far from over, but for now, the silence had been broken in the best way possible, the promise that help had arrived, and that humanity was back, ready to stand against darkness and protect the helpless no matter the cost. The Brakkan fleet, dark and menacing, had encircled the Eliari homeworld like a swarm of predators sensing weakness. But as the human ship Obsidian Dawn glided through the star-streaked void, a calm certainty radiated from its captain, Maravas, who watched the enemy fleet through reinforced viewports with steady eyes. She knew the Brakkan expected the humans to hesitate, to falter under the weight of so many hostile ships, yet the humans had no intention of retreating or surrendering. Instead, they demonstrated an unshakable resolve that echoed through the void like a silent thunder. Their technology far beyond anything the Brakkan could imagine, from shields that absorbed energy bolts to drones that repaired damage instantly, making every Brakkan attack seem futile, and with each failed assault, frustration built in the enemy ranks, yet Mara remained calm, sending a single message through the comm channels that shook the Brakkan like a cold wind. We are here to protect the helpless. Stand down or be disarmed. The message was met with silence, but it was clear the Brakkan were weighing their options, their commanders holding tense debates behind their walls, unsure if they could afford a war with an unknown power, especially one willing to defend a dying species that many had ignored or written off. The tension stretched thick as the humans deployed small boarding pods that floated gently toward the Eliari surface, not to attack, but to repair and aid, carrying engineers and doctors who worked with it. Quiet efficiency to restore life to the ravaged world below, their presence a beacon of hope to the Eliari people who watched with cautious eyes from the shadows, wondering if these humans were the salvation their legends foretold or a new threat cloaked in kindness. Then the Brakkan launched their assault again, faster and more furious this time, sending swarms of fighter drones to cut through the human shields, but the Obsidian Dawn's advanced defense systems adapted in seconds, turning their own energy back against the attackers and disabling entire squadrons without destruction, sparing lives but breaking will, and Mara's crew operated with flawless precision, each move a dance of survival and control, turning the battle into a chess game where every free Brakkan move was countered and outmatched. The standoff stretched on for hours, with neither side gaining ground. But the humans showed no sign of fear or desperation, their calm confidence unsettling even the fiercest Bracking commanders, who began to question whether their old tactics could defeat a species that fought not for conquest or pride, but for justice and mercy. Meanwhile, on the surface, the Eliari began to heal as human technology reversed the sun's decline in small but crucial ways, stabilizing solar flares and repairing damaged energy fields, proving that the humans' promise was not empty words, but actions backed by power and compassion, and this act of restoration spread quickly across nearby systems, inspiring other peaceful species to hope for a new era of protection and cooperation, though the Breakcan's influence remained strong in many parts of the galaxy, spreading fear that humanity's return might ignite a war unlike any before. As the sun's light grew stronger, Mara convened her officers in the command room. Knowing this was more than a battle over a star system, it was a test of what humanity represented in the galaxy, a chance to show that strength could be wielded with honor, and that power was not just for destruction, but for salvation. With careful planning, she prepared a message to send to the hidden human enclaves scattered across the stars, calling for unity and vigilance, for the galaxy was watching and waiting to see if the legends of humanity's past would become the truth of its future. Then came the Breakcan's final gamble, a concentrated strike aimed at the heart of the Obsidian Dawn itself, a massive missile swarm intended to overwhelm defenses and cripple the ship in one blow. The crew braced for impact, but at the last moment, the ship's core technology activated an ancient and mysterious shield that surrounded them in a sphere of shimmering light, absorbing the missiles harmlessly and turning their energy into a brilliant display of power that illuminated the dark space. Like a second sun, a sign to all that humanity was not just back, they were unstoppable when defending what was right. The Breakcan, shaken by this show of strength, began to pull back, but Mara was not done. She sent a fleet of smaller human ships to escort the boarding teams and to protect the Eliari world from any future attacks, signaling to the galaxy that humanity's return was real and that they would not abandon those in need. As the dust settled and the Breakcan fleet retreated, the Eliari slowly emerged from their shelters, their hope rekindled by the humans who stood with them, no longer legends, but guardians. And in that moment, Mara knew the battle had changed everything. The silence of centuries had finally broken, replaced by the sound of a new future where humanity, feared once as warriors, now stood as the most unexpected defenders of peace in the galaxy. After the fierce standoff, a heavy silence settled over the Eliari system, but beneath it, currents of fear and hope twisted like unseen tides in the hearts of many watching the skies. Captain Mara Voss stood on the deck of the Obsidian Dawn, staring at the distant sun whose flickering light was now steadier thanks to their efforts. Yet she knew the victory was only temporary. The Breakcan Empire, once thought to be a blunt force of chaos, was now revealing its true nature, a web of dark plans and secret factions working in shadows to spread fear and seize control by any means necessary. The elders of the Eliari came forward with troubling news. The star's death was no accident but sabotage. Someone inside the Breakcan had tampered with the star's energy core, hoping to force the Eliari into submission or extinction. This act of cruelty was a message to the whole galaxy, a warning that no one was safe from their reach. Mara's eyes narrowed as she listened, her mind racing with questions and possibilities. How deep did this conspiracy run? Was this just one of many stars being destroyed? She knew the galaxy was bigger and darker than anyone dared admit. Meanwhile, word of humanity's return spread like wildfire through neighboring systems, stirring both awe and fear. Many races remembered the old stories of humans as fierce warriors, unpredictable and dangerous, yet now they saw something else, humans as protectors who fought not for greed but for justice. This new reputation unsettled many in power, especially among them Breakcan leaders who had counted on fear to keep the galaxy in their grip. As Mara prepared to send envoys to the Galactic Council, she faced resistance and suspicion. Old alliances were fragile, and some feared that humanity's return might bring war instead of peace. But Mara was determined. She believed that only by uniting the galaxy's species could they stand against the hidden threat lurking in the shadows. Deep inside the Obsidian Dawn, scientists and engineers worked tirelessly to develop technology that could detect similar sabotage attempts on other stars, hoping to stop the spread of destruction before it was too late. At the same time, human diplomats met with hesitant Eliari leaders, forging bonds of trust and friendship, showing them that the strength of humanity was in its willingness to help and heal, not to conquer. Yet, in the darkness beyond the stars, the Breakcan conspirators prepared their next move, weaving deception and preparing to strike where the galaxy least expected. Mara knew the fight ahead would be long and dangerous, but she also saw the seeds of hope growing in the united hearts of those willing to stand against the darkness. The echoes of fear were strong, but the promise of a new dawn burned brighter, and humanity, once silent and forgotten, was ready to rise and lead the galaxy into a future where peace was more than a dream. The galaxy held its breath as Captain Mara Voss stood on the bridge of the Obsidian Dawn, watching distant stars flicker like tiny flames in the vast darkness, knowing that humanity's moment to rise again had finally come, but it would not be easy. The years of silence, hidden strength, and quiet preparation were over, and now the humans faced a galaxy full of fear, suspicion, and war, yet also hope. For many species, looked toward the humans not as conquerors, but as champions of those who had no one else to turn to, and Mara felt the weight of this new responsibility pressing on her shoulders as she sent messages across star systems, calling for unity, peace, and a stand against the shadows that threatened to destroy the fragile balance. The Breakcan Empire, wounded but far from defeated, was still a dark cloud looming on the horizon, gathering its forces in secret and spreading lies to fracture alliances and ignite conflicts that could engulf the galaxy once more. But humanity's return had already sparked a new era of resistance, with unlikely allies rising. From the ashes of fear, planets long ignored or oppressed by the Breakcan now joined hands with humans and Eliari alike, sharing knowledge, weapons, and courage. Beneath the Obsidian Dawn's hull, engineers worked tirelessly to improve defenses and create new ways to protect not just one world, but many, while diplomats navigated treacherous political waters, building fragile agreements in council chambers filled with doubt and hope. Mara, ever watchful, led strike teams that uncovered hidden Breakcan bases and sabotaged their plans with precision, each mission a small victory that sent ripples of hope through the galaxy, but also drew the attention of the darkest elements who would stop at nothing to see humanity fall back into silence, as battles flared in space and whispers of rebellion spread on distant planets. The humans proved time and again that their strength came not only from advanced technology, but from unyielding spirit, the willingness to fight for others, and a vision of a future where cooperation outshone conquest. Mara's crew, once a handful of forgotten warriors, grew into a fleet of protectors, moving like a shield around vulnerable worlds, and their presence alone was enough to deter many Breakcan raids, while the restored Eliari world flourished under the human care, becoming a symbol of what could be achieved when compassion met power. But the greatest challenge was yet to come, for deep in the shadows of a dying star system, a secret weapon was being prepared by the Breakcan, an ancient device capable of destroying entire solar systems, built on fear and hatred, designed to shatter the fragile peace and plunge the galaxy into chaos once again. And Mara knew that stopping this weapon would require more than firepower. It would demand sacrifice, trust, and the unity of all species willing to stand against the darkness. As the final battle approached, alliances forged through hardship held firm, even among former enemies who now saw humanity not as a threat but as a beacon. Obsidian Dawn led the charge into the heart of enemy space, weaving through traps and ambushes with skill and resolve, the crew's courage shining brighter than the weapons that fired around them. The confrontation was fierce, a dance of destruction and willpower where every move could mean victory or extinction, but in the end, it was humanity's refusal to surrender, their belief in hope and peace, that turned the tide, disabling the weapon and shattering the Breakcan command's grip on the galaxy. As silence fell once more, this time filled with the quiet hum of healing and rebuilding, Mara looked out at the stars knowing humanity had ascended again, not through domination or fear, but by answering a plea, standing beside the weak and daring to be the light in the darkest night. And as new worlds reached Out for friendship and protection, the galaxy began to whisper a new name for humanity, the Guardians of the Stars.